sure you think we're good with the audio.
Yeah, I can hear audio now. I think. Can you guys hear me?
Yeah, we're good.
Okay. All right. Hello, welcome back to Diggett's art stream. So I think I'm the fourth and final artist to go. I'm gonna mute this because I can hear myself talking. Yeah, so today I'm going to be taking the space probe concept that Tim finished up a week or two ago. And I'm just going to start blocking out the model. So last week Menti did, or 2 weeks ago I think Menti did some ZBrush work. So I'm going to actually be working in Maya today. So it's kind of different workflow, a little bit more kind of maybe technical or precise than some of the stuff we've been doing in the past. But a lot of the times when we are building out our concept art or environments, we will build a 3D model out if it's something that we know we're going to be using, more than once. We don't necessarily do a lot of actual 3D work in the games, but we do use the 3D models for reference. So since this space probe is going to be something that's used pretty heavily in the next Exotrex game, we thought it'd be good to at least build out a blockout model of it. So yeah, I will be doing my best to keep an eye on comments over here, so please feel free to ask any questions, but otherwise I'm just going to get started. Okay, so this is Maya, if you haven't seen it before. Maya and 3D Studio Max are probably the two most popular 3D programs. If you're watching this and have never seen 3D kind of in action before, this is one of the most commonly used programs for games and film, TV, pretty much everything. So we use Maya here. This mostly just because that's what we know. So that's what I've used in the past. So it was a good choice to use this. So first thing I'm going to do is just bring in, I have this reference image that Tim drew. Let me find that real quick. I'm going to open it on my other monitor right now, so you know what I'm doing. Let's see, my source images. So I have this reference image that I'm going to kind of keep that on the other monitor, but I'm actually going to import that into the Maya scene too, just so I have kind of a reference for scale and just make sure that all the pieces that I do are more or less the right size. So let's do that. So first thing I'm going to do is just build a polygonal plane. You can see when it comes in, I'm not going to get too much into how the 3D program works necessarily, but you can see we've got this plane that's got all these divisions on it. For reference image, I don't really need all those. I'm just going to turn my subdivisions down to 1 on both axes. And now that I've got that image here, I'm going to scale it up to about the size of this grid. It's relatively arbitrary right now. I can always scale the model back down, but I'm just going to work at this level because this is Maya's default cameras and clipping and stuff like that kind of is set based off of this scale. So yeah, it's at about 25. I'm just going to change those values now. I'm just going to rotate it up also so we can kind of look at it head on. So right now it's gray, so last thing I need to do is to map the image to it is just to open my material editor. And I'll drag that over here. I'm just going to create a blend, just kind of it's a material that has a couple of different attributes for color and shininess and that sort of thing. Just middle mouse dragging that on. And I'm just going to double click on it to get some attributes here. So the main thing I want to do is change the color. And since I want more than just color, I actually want an image to be mapped to it. I could give it any of these colors. You can see it changing over here, but that's not really what I want. So if I click on this little checker box, I get all these options of things that I can map into the color node. So I'm going to map a file. That's what I want here. And you can see I already have it set in my source images folder. It's the space probe. To make it easier on myself when I'm doing references, I'll just go into Photoshop ahead of time and clip them and make sure that the aspect ratio is 1:1. So I don't have to go in and set my just to make sure that basically it doesn't get stretched. So let's hit 6 on the keyboard to see what that looks like. So what I mean by the stretching is like if I scale this up or down, you can see the whole texture kind of scales with it. So if this image was not a perfect 1:1 ratio, it would get kind of squashed in there. So let's see, next thing I want to do then is rotate this 90 degrees because I want to build it at negative 90. I want to build the model kind of facing forward. You can kind of see it down here. It's pretty hard to see, but I want it facing forward down the z-axis. Last thing I want to do before I get started, my last two things, I want to take the shininess off of the blend material. So that's going to get distracting. So I'm just turning the specular color and reflectivity down. And I'm going to go to lighting and turn on two-sided lighting. So that'll show me the object on both sides. If I have this turned off, basically this is considered the back of the polygon. So if I have two-sided lighting turned off, it'll just render as black. So that's why I want to turn it back on. Okay, and then last thing here, I'm just going to add this to a display layer so I can lock it. And what this does is now, you know, when I'm modeling stuff, I can't accidentally select it and do changes to the model. So, one second. Let's see. A couple different ways I could start. I could, I think I'm going to start by just going to the orthographic right view, which gives me a perfect side view of everything. And I'm, you know, anyone who is curious, I'm just holding down the space bar, which brings up the hotkey menu. And if I click in the middle, you can see, and hold down the click, I can drag and select any of my cameras in the scene. So I'm in right view right now. And I'm probably just going to get in and start kind of building this up piece by piece. I could block the whole thing in, but it's a pretty clean design, so I think I can actually just kind of start blocking this in. So you'll notice that it is at a slight perspective, so I'm going to have to kind of guess at a few of these lengths. I'm not going to really want to map it perfectly to each of these lengths because I have to kind of imagine the perspective and kind of stretch it out a little bit. But this kind of gives me a good starting point, at least for the overall scale of everything. Let's see, just thinking about this. One of the big things in 3D modeling too, if not like the main thing to think about when you start out doing this sort of thing, is to try to break things up into the simplest shapes. You know, you can look at something like this and think, wow, that's it's really complicated. There's like extrusions in here and cuts here and curves here and all this stuff. There's a window here and vents. The thing is, you can break this down into a bunch of small shapes. You know, so open this in Photoshop real quick. You can even, like, one thing you can even do is kind of start to break those out for yourself if that helps. Let me turn my opacity down, but you know, so this here might be its own shape. You know, this whole piece here is going to be its own shape. I could probably include this, or I might make that a separate panel. I'll have to figure that out as I get going. But you know, like, it's just basically almost, especially with mechanical things, you can pretty much break anything down into a bunch of smaller, simpler shapes. That makes it much easier to kind of get started and not be overwhelmed. So, with that being said, I'm going to actually get started. So, starting just by making standard cube. I pretty much start off every model I ever do with a cube. It's just very useful shape. Kind of gives you a couple polygons on different planes that you can work with. I'm actually just going to my front view real quick. So I like to work in mirror. So since Maya has some mirroring tools now, but I'm just kind of used to doing it this way, where I work on half of the model at a time. For me, that's just a little bit easier. So you don't actually forget, and then later on I'll end up mirroring everything once I'm done with that. So I think I'm going to start just with this kind of like little mohawk centerpiece here. I'm just getting my reference up on the other screen. Actually, one last thing I want to do, just because this is the way the drawing is and I'm mirrored right now, I'm going to scale this to -25 and build it facing this way. Just because that's how the reference is drawn, since I like working from the right side. That's what I'm going to do. So, let's start by putting this in place, and I'm just going to kind of estimate about how wide I think that is. And kind of start just by scaling that out a little bit. I'm going to scale it down. One thing, I'm not really used to talking while modeling, so I may be a little slower than usual. But we'll just see. So when I look at this, even though, I might be tempted to kind of try to drag this up, when I really pull out, I realize like it's just the kind of 3/4 perspective that we have. This line here is actually going to be pretty much just straight back. So I'm going to just take it back about that far. Again, this is not going to be perfect, but I'm going to basically just try to... A lot of this stuff is estimated, I'm just trying to get it kind of... As long as it looks like this at the end, I'm in pretty good shape. Alright, so next thing I want to do is I'm going to actually extrude, and rather than go all the way back here, I could do it that way, but I'm going to extrude first, because I know that I'm going to want an edge loop right here, because that's where everything kind of turns. And actually, now that I'm thinking about it, because I have this nice even curve, I think I'm actually going to start trying to block that curve in. So that's about that high. So I'm just using the split polygon tool, which is actually a newer tool that allows you to do a number of different things. Allows you to... Let me turn on the wireframe first. I can draw polygons, polygon edges if I want to, or if I hold control down, I can do a whole edge loop. And in perspective, it might be a little easier to see. As you can see, I can do that. So that just puts it as it is. If I want to actually have it follow this curve, I can go to the attributes for that tool. First, I'm going to set my snap attribute to 25, and then go to turn on edge flow. And what that's going to do is kind of try to create like a curve based off of all these points around here. So let's just see what that does. Alright, so I didn't want it to do anything on the bottom, but I can always just select those verts, snap them up here, and just snap these back. And let's just go in, make sure everything's snapped, because I just want everything to be even for now. So that was probably not really necessary to do it that way quite yet. Actually, yeah, that kind of threw everything off, so let's undo that. I'm going to leave edge flow turned off for now. Put that at about 50% way through. And I'm not really thinking too much about polygon count right now. I just want to get the shapes in there however I need to, and then I can always come in and kind of try to clean that up later. And yeah, so there's a little bit of a taper in the front there. And I think we can actually do a little bit more. So I'm just going to do an extrusion this time. Kind of get that last lip in the front. So let's see, I'm going to look from the right side again. I think it doesn't really flatten off, it kind of keeps going up just a little bit. So let's just do this. And that should be pretty good. Obviously, I can always go back and update that later. So next thing is, let's see. Before I go too much further. Okay, so let's see. We've got this little indentation here right in the middle. So I could define that now while I'm here, just by adding an edge loop kind of down the middle here. And let's see, I think that's going to come down to about here. So I'm going to go to my face select mode and just, keeping in mind that I'm going to be mirroring this, so I want to make this look a little bit thinner than what this is. So actually I could probably bring this back in a little bit. And to do that, I'm just going to double click on one of these edges, which selects the whole edge loop, as you can see. Just kind of move that in a little bit. Okay, so now, those selected. And I'm just hitting, 4 gives me wireframe, 5 gives me gray shaded, and 6 gives me the textured view. So when you see me go through between those, that's all I'm doing. So let's see, I just want to go straight down a little bit, not much, just enough to kind of define a little bit of a lip there. Then I get a few extra faces when I do that, so I'm going to go in here, just delete those, because I'm going to be mirroring that. Let's look down the front axis too for a second. Yeah, I got a couple extra polygons from my extrusions. Every time you do an extrusion, it'll add a face kind of everywhere, so just got to go in and clean those up sometimes. So I'm going to delete these faces on the back. I'm not sure how I'm going to close all that off yet. So let's see. I'm just kind of looking at the reference again. I think for now, I'm going to make all this one piece. So let's just continue this extrusion. Because I deleted that face, I actually got to select the edge. So I'm just selecting all of them and inverse selecting. And I'm just going to extrude this all the way back. And let's see, I think right around here, I'm kind of trying to estimate where I think it'll be. I think right there is probably pretty good. It just kind of keeps arching up, which kind of makes me realize, all right, I think all this needs to go up just a little bit more. This curve needs to be a little bit bigger than it is right now. So just kind of carefully making some adjustments. Keep that even. I might need to do more than that later, but I think that's good for now. So because I have like this lip here, you can see this kind of comes up. I'm going to put another edge loop really close here. And before I go any further, I know that I'm going to want to basically end this whole extrusion right here. So also B, by the way, just in case you're wondering, is the hotkey to add this soft selection. If you hold B down, you can increase, and then click and drag and increase that soft selection. As you can see, with one thing selected, you get a percentage of adjustment on everything else. So that can be nice when you're trying to create curves. So let's see. Get rid of that. I'm going to just delete these. And let's see. I'm actually going to hide the display layer for a second just so I can get behind here. And I'm just going to select these two edges, extrude them out to the center, just holding X to make it snap to the grid. And then lastly, actually before I go any further, I'm going to save this because a lot of these modeling tools tend to make Maya want to crash, and I don't want that to happen. I'm actually going to set my project again just to be sure. So yeah, Extract working 3D, okay, Maya. So let's save that. Save this as the probe. Probe 1. Alright, so now it'll be easy just to go back and save anytime I want. Alright, so then I want to just use the append to polygon tool, which I have bookmarked up here. I believe it got moved around Maya 2016, but yeah, it's right here. And if you ever want to add a hotkey up here, all you got to do, you can do this with literally every single thing in the menu. You just hold down Control and Shift and click on it. You'll see it brings the icon up here. Since I already have it, I'm just going to right-click on this and delete it. So with append to poly, that just allows you to draw polygons between edges like that. So when you hit the tool, you'll see that any edge that you can actually draw a polygon from is going to get brighter, going to turn like this bright green. And just hit enter, and there we go. So now that that is done, I think I want to move these a little bit closer so I can really give a nice sharp lip in there. And let's bring our display layer back. So let's see, you can kind of see it just goes up. And you know, I'm kind of having to infer a little bit, but the way that this goes and then the way that this curve is here, it makes me feel like there's kind of a line there that I'm going to try to get. It should be pretty much as easy as just doing that. Let's go up just a little bit more on this. Let's look at the overall curve. I'm just always kind of going in and make these small tweaks. And so I'm aware that there's a nice bevel that goes all the way up. I'm going to wait until I get all of the shapes kind of going down the ship first before I do those bevels. It's much easier to do like a bevel and those types of things once you've got your main shape completely built out, kind of in a block mesh sort of fashion. Let's see, what else? So I've got a little lip here. I'm not quite sure what that's doing. I think it kind of goes in. I think that's how I'm going to interpret it. So let's do one more edge loop here. And let's see. So I could do two things here. I can add another edge loop to kind of mark where the side of this is going to go. Or if I want to save a little bit of polygons, I can just move this out. Problem with that is then I have this really long stretched polygon because of this shape here. So I may end up actually just, well, let's see. How do I want that to be? So that's kind of coming off of there. So actually what I want to do, looks like there is a little bit of a gap here between these, so I might actually put that in real quick. So add an edge loop here. And let's see, move this down. Just wanting V to snap it to where this is, and then actually go just a little bit above that. Alright, I think that's good. So it may just be easier to make these two different pieces, but for now, just doing it this way. It's never too late to go back and change it if you want to. So there we go. That's probably pretty good. And actually, I think this whole thing can probably come in just a little bit. Okay. All right. So this kind of looks like it goes down a little bit. So I'm just going to start just by kind of doing that, scale that like that. I'm just kind of looking at things from different angles, kind of figure out what I think that shape should be. So I think what it's going to require then is to bring this in just a little bit. So you kind of get a lot of edges right around here, but I think that's all right. Let's see, I think also I want to put an edge loop around here so we can kind of create a little bit of an inner lip. There. Okay, I think that's good. So this is kind of some minutia a little bit, but it's, you know, it's a small shape that I can block in pretty quickly and easily, so I might as well. All right, so last thing I want to do on this little section is just kind of round this curve out. So I'm just going to go to the right side again, just add a couple of edge loops in here. And let's do 3 of them, and I'm holding shift so I can do 50% down the middle, and then 25, and then 25. Just bring this up a little bit. So, I'm just going to select all these and just create just a little bit of a curve here too. I want to make sure that this is kind of one long continuous thing, so I'm going to add an edge loop here. It's a subtle curve, and I could probably lose some of these edge loops down the line, but for now, putting them in, again, I can always kind of optimize later. It's pretty easy to do. I do want to round this out a little bit better, so let's move forward a little bit, because we need a little extra kind of around these sharper turns. All right, so one other thing is that this kind of keeps getting higher along here. The thing is I can kind of hide that down there and build these pieces out. So I'm probably going to do that and just sort of leave this kind of going down into the middle. One thing I am going to do though is delete all the faces on the bottom because I'm not going to need those. So, just kind of do the same thing over again. Just grab these edges and deselect them. And I'm just going to extrude back one more time. Actually, this time, because I kind of go off the edge here, I think I am going to actually have to bring that up a little bit, bring the bottom piece up. So let's just do that now, right here. And bring that up just a little bit more. So now that I've got this whole curve here, it's going to be a little bit easier for me to, what's that notification, to kind of figure this curve out really well. And hopefully I can kind of leave it alone after this for a little while. I'm just going to delete all my history right now. You'll notice as you model, you start getting, Maya keeps all of the things that you do to it. You don't really need that. So every once in a while, I just delete. If I type history, thing that's selected, just to get rid of that. So the other thing that I notice is that this kind of tapers in a little bit. So I'm going to go ahead and go to top-down view. And my orientation is a little different, but this is basically the back of it. So I'm going to pull that in just a little bit. Kind of work on a little bit of a taper here. So this one's a lot more subtle and kind of cuts a little bit harder, I think, in the back than the front. So I might just start it from here. So this is my one middle point. This is my other one, which is pretty obvious from how it juts up here. And to get this little lip, let me turn the texture. To get this little lip, I'm going to do something a little bit different this time. Just to show another way of doing this. So I'm just going to double click this edge loop and use my bevel tool. Beveling, besides just doing edges, is also another way to make an even amount of edge loops kind of around an edge loop you already had. So if you set your segments to 2, bring your fraction way down to, for me, I think it'd be like 0.025 or so, yeah. Maybe even more than that. Let's do that one more time. 0.015 maybe. So this is a nice way to kind of make it look like the edge of plates, like armor plating or something like that. And then I just double click, actually, just mouse for a second. Select these two, bring them down a little. Select this one and bring it in. And now, kind of get a little bit of a turn wireframe off, you see. Actually, let me adjust my normal angle real quick to like 30. Yeah, so see now I kind of get that plate in there. It's kind of nice looking. Actually, I probably want to do that here too, so I'm going to add an edge loop right through the middle of this. Kind of do the same thing, sort of differentiate between all the different sections. So the other way to do this, of course, would just be to actually build these into multiple pieces, which I could very easily do too, but I'm just not going to right now. Let's see, I think that should be good. Yeah, so you can kind of see the edge there. All right, so last thing, real small detail, but this kind of angles up here, which kind of gives it this nice sleek look. So I'm just going to go to my right side and pull this back just a little bit so we can kind of recreate that. And then I'm also just going to put one more edge loop here. This is kind of the, just to continue that curve just a little bit more. Let's see. See if I even need that. Hopefully be one of the last times I have to adjust this curve. Alright. So now we pretty much have this central kind of piece here blocked in. And after this, I kind of feel like, most of these are going to be other different plates and stuff like that. So, and I'm going to have to make up some of the stuff in the back. But last thing I want to do is kind of put this little bevel in here, or this little inset piece here, and then I'll do the overall bevel on the sides to kind of really make it look more like a solid plating thing and not just like some really obvious 3D model. So let's see, real quick, this would probably be right here. So first thing I want to do is add an edge loop here to kind of define the top piece of this. And I think I want to do one of the bottom. So the bottom one is going to be a little trickier. I'll actually make that flat. Just going to kind of drag over a bunch of these edges. And there we go. So obviously I don't need this edge loop going all the way along here. So I'm just going to end it right, let's see, I really only need it to go to here. So I'm going to delete this one. And I have like one of the hotkeys, which is to delete, actually it doesn't matter here, but it deletes verts and edges at the same time, which will be more useful here. So actually I can show you, if I just hit delete right now, you'll notice all those vertices are still here, and I end up with this like 6-sided polygon, which I don't want. But if I click this, let's see, get the whole edge loop. If I click that, Let's see, it gets rid of all the vertices too. And I think you can also like control delete. If you control and delete, it'll do the same thing. So I'm going to use my pen to poly tool, or not the split poly tool now, just to kind of continue this to here. Just make a little triangle and end that. So let's see. I think I'm actually going to have to add an edge loop here so I can get that shape. All right. So I can drag and do this because I don't have any faces behind it because I'm going to mirror it. So this one, we'll do kind of a softer sort of extrusion, and I'll show you a way to do that. So there's two ways to do it, really. I could just extrude in and then select all the edges going around it. There, and then double click to, double click can be finicky sometimes. I'm using the Wacom tablet. The double click is not always as sensitive as it is with the mouse. So then I could do that, and I could do a bevel. But you can see what happens there is it kind of pushes my vertices out. I don't really want that to happen. So instead, I'm going to extrude, and I can use this, but I can also type some numbers in or drag. So I want to make my thickness negative 0.05. Actually, no, way smaller than that, negative 0.01. Let's do that. I want to do a little bit of an offset, so it kind of pulls it in, and we kind of create a softer sort of curve underneath, sort of a bevel around this edge. But it also doesn't push these exterior vertices out. So I'm going to do an offset of the same, but just without doing the negative. You can see that brings it in, so I get a nice little hard edge there that'll pick up light. And then this one I can just put straight back. And if I look at this reference again, kind of see that looks like only goes in just a little bit, but it's nice to kind of break the panel up with that a little. Okay. And I'm actually going to do the same thing I did over here. Just delete this. And the reason that I delete that first one first is if I just double click, it's going to give me all these extra edges. So if I just delete the last one first, then my edge loop selection ends there. Then I can just draw here. And it all set. So actually, let's see though, because I want to do a bevel here, so this might get a little trickier. I got to think about this for a second. I do want to delete this, but I might actually continue this elsewhere. I might do it down here. Okay, yeah, I think that's what I want to do. So let's take a look at this front. Kind of rounds off here and then gets a little tighter. So I think I'm only going to bevel to here, and I'm going to delete these faces and do a little bit of rebuilding. Well, no, let's just do this. So this is going to bevel and kind of soften this whole side piece here. So you can see the nice thing about waiting to do the bevel to the end is I can just kind of get one uniform bevel all the way across. So now the question is, do I want to have kind of this hard edge? It looks more like it's sort of a soft rounded edge, so I'm going to add an extra segment to this, which kind of rounds that profile out just a little bit. So I'll show you again what 0 looks like, or sorry, 1 gives me kind of a harder edge. And then I can go up to 2. I can even do 3 if I really wanted to round it out. But I think 3 is probably a little bit of overkill right now. Then again, most likely this is just going to be for render and paint over, so I could do higher, not have to worry about the poly count, but this should be fine. And then once I soften my normals using this, I'll set my normal angle to about 35. That should probably take care of it. I gotta select the object first. Yeah, so that pretty much took care of it. Looks like I got a weird normal down here. Yeah, so I actually want all these to be hard normals. And to anyone who is not familiar with any of these concepts, the normal angle is basically every polygonal face has a front and a back, and that front has a directional value associated with it. So that directional value you can tell that face basically to kind of create a gradient in shading across it. So for example, right now, kind of see how this is sort of starting to dim a little bit, and that's because like the normal angle got a little bit messed up when I did my extrusion. It's a pretty common thing to happen. But if I select this and just say mesh display harden normals or harden edge, I got to do it on this edge piece too to really get that defined properly. It's doing some weird stuff, actually. But you can see now it's just a kind of standard hard edge there. And I'm not sure why it's giving me that darkening still. Oh, I think it's because of this edge. So sometimes you got to go back in and kind of adjust how the normals are rendering. But not too big of a deal. And so you can either set it by angle, so like anything over that angle will be a hard edge, anything under that angle will be a soft edge. Sometimes though, if it's like a mechanical thing, you know that you just want to do harder edges. So for this, that's what I'm doing, just doing hard edge. And I think that fixed it. Yeah, so now you're not seeing that dimming here anymore. Okay. So I think last thing I want to do here is delete these faces. As you can see, we have this kind of bulbous thing here that kind of cuts in. And then I'm going to have these other shapes here, which I may do now. A little bit of an angle to it, so I'm just going to bring this in. I think for now that should do it. And then just to sort of round that out. And to end this, so it is not just ending on this open edge here, I'm just going to extrude that in and kind of tuck it away underneath. With one last extrusion. And that's just going to go straight up. Okay, I had my background selected. So let's try that again. Extrude and just go straight back. So I'm going to go to my front view real quick. And actually, because I'm modeling this backwards, I'm going to go to my back view real quick. And just kind of make a little adjustment here. Make sure I'm not grabbing the incorrect vertices. Okay, so I think that's pretty good. Might need a little cleanup here at some point, but I think for the most part that's fine for blocking it in. All right. Look at my reference again. Figure out which piece I want to do next. Let's just kind of keep building out, I guess. I guess we'll just kind of do this little teeny piece here next, which can kind of give me this shape. I'm going to do it with a new square. I'll try to do this one a little bit quicker. So let's just do that. I'm holding V down just to sort of snap that cube in place. Turn wireframe back on. So this button here actually turns wireframe. It's what's it called? Like wireframe on shaded, I think it's called. Yeah, you can see down at the bottom there. It's called wireframe on shaded. So that way, you still get with modeling. This is really convenient because you can see where all your edge loops are. If this is turned off and the model's not selected, it's a little bit harder to see where all your edges are. So this is going to pretty much snap to the bottom of this. And one thing I want to do, I'm going to go into my outliner real quick, and I'm going to label a few things. So it's ref plane. No, plane. Dirt. And these I'm just going to group as probe. All the probe pieces for now I'm just going to drop under this, and I'm going to add this probe to a render layer, or to a display layer. And let's label these layers while we go, now that we have more than one. This is the reference layer, and then this is my probe. I'll call it probe group. And this way I can just turn it off real quick so I can look at my reference without having to go back into the outliner and select. So I want this cube to go about back to here. I think this little piece could be a little bit shorter, very little bit. So let's just go to the side real quick. Just move it up just a little bit. Okay. So I'm going to change the pivot point on the box so I can snap it to from the top to here. So I'm just going to hold down D and V at the same time, which allows me to move the pivot and just snap it to this vert. And then just holding V down, I can snap it there. So I remember just from looking at the reference that it goes back to right about where this extrusion stops, and then it goes all the way up to the very front. And lastly, not lastly really, but moving over here, snap that over here. So now I'm ready to get going with that piece. I think this needs to be a bit more snub-nosed. The more I'm looking at this, well, no, I'm going to mirror it though. So maybe I'll take a look at what that looks like real quick. A quick preview of the mirror. Kind of compare that. Okay. I think that's good. I think I'm just going to have to scale this out a little bit. Make sure I've got enough room here. And then, turn my reference back on, you can see, let's kind of get it down to about here. Get that shape built in there. And I'm just going to kind of estimate again, you know, because I'm doing a 3/4 view, I kind of have to guess on a few of these things. Just sort of estimate, but like if I kind of go up here and look at it from that angle, feels about right. So let's go by the edge here. Just move that forward a little. Select this face and extrude down to about, I don't know, maybe about here. I'm interpreting this as going straight down. It looks like maybe it does go back a little bit, but I think for now I'm just going to leave it straight. And last thing is just put this little extrusion in there, kind of like a little what's the word? Like ventilation shaft kind of thing to kind of keep it cool as it moves forward. One second. All right. Yeah. So I think for this one, I'm actually going to do another kind of using, I really like using extrusions to get kind of like to measure my shapes a little bit. So I'm going to start just by cutting this right down the middle. Remember, I have snap turned to 25%. I think by default, the snap is turned to 10%. I like doing 25 because I can cut it in half very easily that way. But I still have the option to kind of do the quarters. I usually don't need anything finer than that. So I could take this and snap, just to show that there's a lot of different ways to do this. I could snap these at 25 on both sides, and then I can go in and select these edge loops, and then I can decide how wide I want that extrusion to be. So that's one way to do it. Another way to do it is put that one down the middle, and then just do a bevel. And that way I don't need to worry about the one in the middle. If I want to go a little bit past that, 0.2 maybe, do like 1.15, I think would be perfect. So this actually curves up a little bit here too, so actually I think I want that one in the middle. I might actually do 3. Yes, and that'll allow me to... Oop. So this goes a little above the curve. I'm going to keep it a little bit under. I think that'll be a little cleaner. And let's go to back view again. Because for me right now, back is actually the front because of the orientation of everything. And we'll take these two, bring them up just a little bit. I think I might scale those out just a tad. Kind of round that out. And let's do another 50% here so we can get a good curve. The nice thing about doing it like this is that I can come in and scale these all out a little bit if I want. Which I do. Okay, so let's take a look. So we can see this goes right into this bottom piece. Now this is curved here, so I'm actually going to probably do this starting with a cylinder so I can get a good, even, clean curve here, and then I'll cut it up a little bit. So that'll be another piece. So what I'm going to do is delete the bottom faces. And just do another extrusion in. Now I want all these faces. And I'm going to do that little bevel trick again. I set my thickness to something like -0.1. Okay, way smaller, negative 0.02 maybe. 201 actually. I think that's perfect. Yeah, 1.5. A lot of trial and error sometimes. And then offset of 0.015. And then this one can just go straight back. And I'm going to go all the way back with this, because this tube pretty much goes all the way through. So let's take a look. I've got this piece back here, and I don't know what to do with it right now. I think I can delete all those faces, but I'm just going to look at the reference again real quick. Yes, that's all going to be hidden behind all these other pieces, so I'm just going to just drop these faces entirely for now. And I also don't need the ones in the bottom, because that's going to get defined by something else. So you can see, because of the way that I did that extrusion, it kind of brought everything in, sort of as a whole, kind of in a little bit. So I'm just going to come back, take those two that I took extrusions, and just snap them back down. So now it is nice and even. So let's see. I'll just bring my reference picture up again. Got that front-facing thing. So I kind of see a little bit of a lip here too, so I might extrude a little bit out to kind of be able to follow the width of this. And actually, I kind of like it. Almost looks like there's a little extrusion up here. I kind of like the way that that looks. So I'm going to give it a little bit more visual interest that way. And there we go. I think that's pretty good. All right. So let's just keep going down and kind of get this central core kind of worked out. So next thing I want to do, I think about this. This shape's going to be a little bit weird down here because we've got a perfect curve here from a cylinder that kind of switches in the same plate into a cube. So I think about that, but then we got a straight plate kind of coming off that. This piece is going to be interesting to do too. But that's why we do this. Let's see. Okay, so I'll just start with a cylinder. We'll just kind of get moving and see what happens. To 90% rotation, or 90 degrees. And bring that out here. Snap up to that point. So that's where my pivot is. Because you can see it kind of curves down. Definitely curves down, but then where it hits this, it just goes straight back. So I want to hit my pivot there, and then I'm going to end up extruding it. Once I get this curve and this shape just right, I'll extrude it back. Just deciding if I want to have more subdivisions. I don't think I do. I can always smooth it later. So first thing I want to do is just get rid of these end caps. Get rid of the bottom half. And I think maybe these three. Do this one. I want to keep a little bit of a curve here, just because it looks like it does start to curve down just the tiniest bit here. Wireframe back on. Wireframe back on. Okay. Okay. And I'm going to get it. Let's see. So I'm going to have 2 points here. I need to be able to have an edge loop here so I can create that plate. And I'm going to need another edge loop here because we kind of change direction in our shape there. So I'm going to estimate that looks like it's, first plate's probably right around here. First curve is here. So this is kind of a tough shape to get. I'm going to have to kind of probably fake this a little bit to make this curve work. Just thinking. Okay, let's just go with the second curve. Get these edges here. Make sure I've got all of them. I'm just going to extrude straight out and in a little bit to kind of. So as long long as I keep this active thing up, it's going to go in along that normal angle. So you can get a pretty nice, so the problem is because I actually, so here, let's go back. Because I deleted all that, it makes it a little bit harder. All these other pieces, it makes it harder to get a good even insert, or bevel in, not bevel, extrusion in. So let's do it with the whole thing, and then I'll delete the pieces I don't need after that. I think right around there. Okay, so let's get this edge loop again. And just going to extrude out just a little bit. Let's see, how far does that go? Just looking at this real quick. Not that far. And just bring that in. So I think I'm looking at the reference on the other side. If that's going to work. Figure out how far down I want to go with that. Okay, I think that's probably good enough. So just get rid of these faces now. Save. And I know I'm going to want an edge loop right here to do that plate. Let's just do that plate now. While we're here, do our bevel. Set this to about 0.1. Just see what that looks like. Segment. 2 segments, so I get one down the middle. Maybe make this a little bit smaller. 0.07. Let's try that. Okay. Careful with that. And just kind of scale it in a little bit. Because it's scaling kind of from this point, not the original center, I'm just going to also move it down in the tiniest bit. And then this is kind of a rounded edge here. It's pretty sharp, but not perfectly. So first I want to bring this down a little, just to kind of make sure I have enough topology there. And I kind of see this as rounded. Kind of have to imagine, although you can see this is pretty flat here. So let's just do, I want to see what happens when I turn on edge flow, just kind of see what I get. It's not too bad, actually. I think the one thing I'm going to have to do, though, is like this really needs to be a bit more straight, my top view. And the bottom of this panel, so this is definitely a very complicated kind of panel shape. It's not just like a perfect circle, it's kind of squared off and then also circular. It's a little tricky. And then here, too, I want to make sure that this is straight. And actually, looking at the reference, it's probably going to come in a little bit, kind of down and in, sort of V-shaped. A certain amount of that is kind of up to me, and kind of just figuring out what looks good once it gets built out in 3D. The other thing when I look at this reference is I actually get a feeling that it's like it tapers a little bit, so I feel like this curve is a little bit sharper, and then down here is more of a kind of flat, so sort of like up and then more around. So I'm going to try to get that in there a little bit just by looking at the back view and kind of clustering some of these a little closer together. So first of all, I want to make sure that this goes out to the same length as this. I think I'm going to add another edge loop in here. Actually make this perfectly straight too, just so I can kind of curve it a little more. So let's just kind of put these in place by hand and sort of see what happens. Ooh, rotate just a little. Maybe add one more loop here. So you see, that's when it's really useful to get that extra curve. I don't know why that's bugging out the way it is. Alright, and this kind of straightens out a little bit more. I'm actually just going to make this almost perfectly straight. So this, let's see. Okay, yeah, that's a little. Make that how it is.
Are you using the big ass at the night?
Just thinking, I think this might be a little too far down. Just bring that over.
Can you try the nightly one? Is he
Again, curves mixed with squared edges can be pretty tricky to get looking exactly how you want it to look. But just gotta be patient sometimes and move everything around just a little bit. And you can usually get it. So I think that's looking kind of cool. I don't think it's quite exactly what we got here. I almost feel like there's perspective. Yeah, I don't know. Let's see. I might need to just pull this down. It's just this piece in here is kind of tricky to get. Maybe bring that in. Oh, let's see. Let me try something. Try to adjust this. Kind of everything works with. You gotta make sure everything is working with everything. So I just gotta move a few more things around to make something else work. That's okay. So, all right, I think I'm just gonna go with that shape for now. Now, again, this is blocking. We're gonna do paint overs of this eventually, most likely. So, last thing, I just want to kind of round this off with a little bit of a bevel. You can always decide later on, like if you don't like the bevel, just to kind of come in and pinch all that back together. You know, you select the edge ring instead, just collapse it, and there, bevel's gone. So you can always go back and change things if you decide to change your mind. And I just want to kind of straighten all this out, make sure all this is on the same plane. I think I'm actually going to put it there. All right, I think that's good for now. So a few other little things, a few other little details on this guy are got a couple little pieces here. So I think I'm going to actually make this a little separate cylinder that kind of goes there as a little kind of side piece, but I want to cut a little hole out first to sort of give that a place to live. Just give some extra edge loops. And actually, before I do that, I want to turn off the edge flow. I'm just kind of eyeballing this. It doesn't have to be perfect. Okay, so just extrude that in. I've got a little place where I can go. Actually, here, let's do the old bevel thing. -0.01. Nope, negative. Those bottom ones because I don't need them. And put that all on the same plane. So I think because of the sort of tilted angle to that, it sort of shifted everything a little bit. But I think if I look at it this way, it actually works. So, all right, and then I'm just going to bring another little detail piece down in here, another cylinder. About 90. Oh, 901. Since it's going to be a really tiny piece, I'm going to turn this down to 14 subdivisions so I don't waste too many polygons. And I'm kind of seeing it as more of like a squashed cylinder here. So I'm going to snap it right to the middle of this pivot. Just move it in. Let's just keep scaling until we get it right in place. Kind of look here, rotate it just to kind of match these two lines. Just kind of to be close, doesn't have to be perfect. And lastly, we want to make sure it's also following this same line here. You can see offsets it. We want to be right in the middle of these. Okay, since this is going to be inside, delete all these faces. You're never going to see them. And there we go. So just a nice little extra detail there. Actually, I just want to kind of make one more little adjustment. Let's kind of taper that curve just a little bit. I can get rid of. Not gonna need. Alright, so it looks weird from a few angles, but once we've got that covered with this other plate, it'll be pretty good. Good to go. So last thing, I've got like a little bit of a gap here. I'm going to my back view. I'm going to make sure that this kind of, let's see. Make sure it kind of snaps up with that. So I'm going to make a little bit of an adjustment here. So it lines up just right. Alright, close enough. So last thing now, let's take a look at the reference. I don't know what goes on behind here. I think this whole chunk is going to kind of cut right into that. But this spacing implies that this maybe comes out a little wider. So I'm just going to extrude the whole thing back for now, and then I'll figure that out once I get a few more pieces built in. And I'm just going to extrude it back as far as that. So that way when you look in here, you can't really see. And while I'm at it, let's just close this hole off here. Just in case we had a render where we're looking down here, we can put a back wall. Just gonna close off these vertices here. Make sure that they are snapped together and not just two verts sitting directly on top of each other. So there we go. So let's take a look and kind of pull back a little bit. I'm going to turn this off of reference and maybe move this over. Okay. So, you know, we got something going here. It's starting to look kind of interesting. Turn the wireframe off for a minute. And save. So normal, a lot of times when you make an extrusion on a cylinder, it kind of, for whatever reason, hardens every single one of the edges on them. So I'm just going to go in real quick and change that to 35. 35 is usually a good starting point. And that's actually pretty good. So that's looking nice. Hit and save. Just want to turn on my occlusion real quick in Viewport 2.0 just to kind of get a little better idea of how this is going to look. Doesn't change the model at all, but you can just see it just adds a little bit of shading kind of around the corners. Just looks a little nicer. So yeah, it's starting to take some shape. It's looking pretty nice. So you can see how like having these little things to break up these pieces can be nice. And actually, I forgot there's another one here, so I think I'm going to do that real quick. I'm going to read this as an extrusion in, and then this will be another little cylinder here. So let's see. Duplicate this guy. And this is going to be more of a 90-degree angle, I think. So I'm going to turn off occlusion now. Occlusion kind of slows things down. So let's turn that off. And turn wireframe back on. Let's see. That's going to go right around here. So let's give that a place to be inset just a little. And actually, I kind of like this. I'm reading this as a little bit of a lip. I think that'll catch a nice glint. So let's actually extrude. Rather than extrude, I think I'm going to scale this out. Just a bit. Okay. This edge loop in a little bit. Just a bit. One here. So I'm going to make this one a little bit bigger. Just not that much though. So let's do the extrude at -0.01, 0.01. So that's the exact same as that. And then extrude back just a little. Delete those. And just for fun, we'll snap all this. That's all the same plane. So if I wanted to perfectly center this, I could do like an edge loop here. I'll do this a lot of the times when I'm really trying to be precise. So I'll do one right down the middle, and then if that's done, I'll center pivot this just to make sure it's right on the center, then just snap it right to the middle. And that can make it easier to get kind of perfect placement of things. Let's see, I scale this just a tiny bit, but that actually came out, even with eyeballing, came out pretty close to the same. It's always nice when that happens. All right, and then I got one more. This is where I'm starting to hit some stuff that's looking a little weird. The perspectives are bizarre. I think this whole thing needs to come up a little bit. Back view, because we're going to have to adjust this curve a little bit now that we're doing this. I think this is going to make it better though, so I'm glad I'm taking the time to do this now. Just a little bit of a, oh, got an extra vert there. A little harder curve around here, which is actually what I wanted in the first place, so that's nice. Kind of straighten this out. Let's see what that does to our pieces. This I should just be able to bring up. And I think right now I'm in object mode for moving, so if I just double click on move, I can change this to world for a second, so I can bring it straight up in world space. Otherwise, it'll kind of go up at slight angle because I have the object slightly rotated right now. So let's top down view. So actually it looks like the way I moved that did sort of change the angle a little bit. So let's get that in place. I think that looks pretty good. And then this one should just be able to come up and in. Actually, I think it needs to rotate out that way a little bit too. Scale it up and in a little bit. Okay, I think that works. I think it probably could still, I don't know. Let's see. Could come up a little bit more, but I think I'm going to go with it like this. Because I definitely want to get a bit more blocked in, you know. Just realized I'm going for about an hour, so at least get this central core kind of blocked in and maybe these wings. So let's do, yeah, let's just do a real quick extrusion to get this little piece here. Actually, I don't even need to do that. I can just do this, and then I can just select these verts here, bring it in that way. And I think that's pretty good. So usually I would clean this up. Well, actually I'll just well. I double click, I think these rings. Get the edge ring instead of the edge loop, which is basically these stacks. Just collapse that so I don't have all these extra polys. So like I said, I can always go back and clean up more later. Sometimes though, it's just like, it's just worth doing it right now because I'm already here. And actually I can do the same thing here where I just get rid of these and get rid of this. Save, because this particular tool crashes mine pretty frequently. And just draw that, and now we have quads, and we are good to go. Okay, let's see, next piece. So I guess I will do, can't see that, I'm pointing at the screen, this little piece here, and the, oh, that's right, so this has to go across, so actually I gotta finish this piece now. This is doing some other stuff, and this actually has to come down, so I was looking at this pretty weird. Let's see here. Again, yeah, these types of shapes are incredibly difficult to get right. Tim likes to challenge me. I'm just going to be quiet for a minute and try to get this part just right. The whole whole thing sort of tapers it twice. I mean, it goes from like a hardened edge to like this rounded thing, and then it goes back into a hardened edge again, all on one plate. And there's no divisions, so it's kind of really got to get the shape just right to make it believable. I'm not so sure that it is right now. I may just change the design for now a little bit to make it work a little bit better. First, I'm going to collapse a few of these and just end them in triangles because they don't really need to be. They currently are. And I'm going to close this off just with a quick extrusion across. Actually, let's do it from here. Scale that, snap it here, extrude one more time, snap it there, extrude one more time. So now, snap these up. The V key is not working. There we go. And that's not quite enough, so I gotta still combine those verts. So let's bring this all forward just a little bit. You can come in a little bit. Let's do this from the orthographic view so we can kind of make this a little more precise. Kind of comes in a little bit more than that. Just trying to kind of average these lines a little bit. Okay, so this kind of ends here. I think I'm going to pull this edge all the way across to the center line. Snap it into that middle piece. Still not quite sure this works. I feel like looking at this is almost thinner than this is. Strange perspective. Alright, I'm just going to go with it for now and move on. So, yeah, like basically this whole space here is just way too big, obviously. So I guess I could say that it kind of comes out. Let's see what that looks like. We'll just do that. Nah, I don't want to do that. It's going to make it much harder to do the other piece. I'll select real quick. Okay. I'm going to bring these down a little bit. And I think that should do it. Last thing I want to do is just do a little bevel extrusion here. Okay. Or not bevel, sorry. Yeah, extrusion, which kind of on its own will do a bit of a bevel. Okay, and then I'm going to do one that's just kind of in, back, just a straight thing. All right. So it's a little bit different. Sometimes you just kind of have to, you know, drawing things, sometimes the perspective will look right a certain way. Then once you start to build it out in 3D, you realize to make a certain shape meet up with another one, you gotta adjust it just a little bit. So that's no big deal. We'll make this plate now. It's kind of like a little wing almost, kind of coming down, but like a little angular shaped thing. So I'm just gonna make that as a plate and actually make this middle cube piece too to kind of wrap this front center portion up. So let's do the front first. And again, reminder, I'm just looking at this on the side also. I'll bring this down just a little bit, I think. So I want it to come out to here, so I'm gonna kind of do one more sort of hanging piece here. Kind of comes back, and that way I kind of have a guide. Just sort of my half at a time sort of thing. As you can see, nothing on this side right now except for this guy, which I've already mirrored. Bring it up there, just snap it in place. And I'm gonna guess that this goes back pretty far. And it probably also does a similar kind of taper, kind of up. Sort of as you can see, it kind of tapers in a little bit too. And yeah, let's see from the back. So these are gonna kind of come in quite a bit, I think. Yeah. Whoops. That's right, these all need to kind of be the same because I'm splitting it down the middle. Okay. So kind of a shape like that, that actually probably should A, extend down a bit further, B, should actually snap here and come up. Hold on a second. What happened? There you are. Okay. And that allows for a nice clean kind of docking in there. Have my normal angle this again just to make sure that's looking right. So again, I think this is actually going to hang down under. Let's see what this is in comparison. Yeah, so I'm going to actually leave these faces there and just kind of create a little bit of a taper out here too. And in the front, I think it tapers back a little, just a bit. Okay. I'm just going to kind of go with that, kind of keep this shape simpler for now. I don't think it needs to be anything more than this. It's there for blocking, so it's a good start. I am going to actually, I'll just soften the front up just a little bit. Just make it look a little bit nicer. Just get all these edges real quick. Don't want anything on the top. Just that, yeah, okay. Just maybe 0.2, and I'll give it 2 segments. Actually, 0.1, 2.5, 2. And let's actually do one more of these, but with the edge flow turned on. Actually, 2 more, just to kind of really clean that out. So you can see they kind of busted this out a little bit, so I'm going to turn edge flow off and just do that by hand. Because it's kind of calculating it from every angle, so a lot of times when you get near an edge, it can get a little weird. Just move that forward just a tiny bit. Very little bit. Okay. I think I'll actually want one more up here that kind of tightens this curve up just a little bit. I think it'll just look nicer that way. Okay. That's pretty good. Let's see what we got over here. All right. All right, let's get that wing piece down there. Try to move a little bit quicker now. More blocking, less detail. So this one, and looking at this, you can edge loop down, 2 edge loops down the middle, so I can get that kind of lightning bolt kind of shape in there. And then it kind of curves in just a little bit. So, but besides that, it's really not much more than just a cube with a couple slight alterations to it. So, first thing, I think it'll look really cool if it's really hanging down lower than everything else. And so let's get this main shape in here. I think it at least goes back to where this thing starts, maybe a little bit further back. And it comes like right to the front of this. I think kind of want to pull the weight of everything back so the whole thing really feels streamlined and like it's kind of just doing this nice curve. So kind of get a nice curve around there. That in. I think this comes up a little. So let's put 2 edge loops here, kind of to match up with that. And I guess we actually have to go up that high. So let's drag that over by accident. Drag these up because I want it to pretty much snap right up to this. Actually, let's snap it to here, and then extrude straight up on this one. With just a little bit of a snap, and I'm just going to use this kind of as a guide for how to do this shape. So let's move you over here, and we'll put this here. Go up that just a little bit. And there we go, pretty much. Not a whole lot more to it than that. So you can see, because the way that this tapers, this sort of fakes it, and you're able to draw the straight line, but it actually has to curve in a little bit. So I try to get that in there now. I think just doing this should pretty much take care of that. Maybe rotate it just a bit to kind of get that plane on the front sort of angled right. I kind of want to pull all of this out. The plate is just right flush up against that. Yeah, I think that's good. If you hold tab down, you can just do these nice big selections like that. So I'm going to pull that in a little. So this keeps a kind of sharp edge here. I actually want to diffuse that a little bit. So save real quick. I'm just going to do that just by kind of moving that around at the bottom. Because the way that it tightens, it gets a little bit funky. Let's see. Actually, here's what we're going to do. Let's collapse those edges. Because I don't really need it to go past this. And then that way I'll have more of a clean kind of cut. Okay. So let's just kind of pull this in a little bit first, and then I'm just going to round it out. Back view. Rotate it maybe a little bit. And let's just do 50%, 50%, 50%. Just pull that out to kind of round that out a little bit. Maybe a little bit of a rotation. Very little. I think it needs just a little more than that. I'm going to rotate the whole thing. Pull this in. Alright. Leave that there. Getting a little bit of a weird normal from this. So I might try deleting these real quick and just sort of see if it looks better if I connect it in the back. Yeah, I think that's a little cleaner. I think it adds like an extra 3 or 4 polygons, but it's not too big of a deal. Still a little bit bizarre. Maybe if I round out this part just a little, kind of take that away. I'm just getting that like kind of pinched shading here. I don't really like. I think if I adjust the normal angle, that'll fix that too. Let's see. Turn this off. Yeah, I'm still getting a bit of a hard edge there, so my normal angle, maybe try 45. So you just do, sometimes you just got to do a soften, and then set it after that. Huh, I don't know why that's less than 45. I don't know why it's staying hard like that. 55. Okay, there we go. And let's just pull all these out. But I'm going to keep this part flat, just so it stays flush. There we go. Oh man, that's stubborn. Alright, sometimes you just got to select the edges individually. And just the normal angle that way. Okay, there we go. So that's pretty good. Alright, let's see, what else do we have here? I'm going to try this front piece. I may just block it in with like a really basic round shape real quick. Just want to kind of give it a shot though and just see what I get. Just to sort of round out this front piece. Actually, no. So rather than work with a sphere, because I get all these pinched polygons up here, I actually like to start my spheres as squares a lot of the times. And because you notice if I hit 3 to do smooth preview, it pretty much goes straight to a sphere. So if I click this button, this is the smooth subdivision. So set it to 2. And you know, it's a little bit pinched on the sides, but since this is going to kind of be an irregular shape anyway, not too worried about that. So for this one, let's just kind of start it here. We can do a couple soft select adjustments. So again, like I said, it's tricky because it's this like perfect squared off angle, but it's all round too. So let's just work on half of this at a time. That'll make it a little easier. So there we go. Kind of go gradually into it, you know. Not sure how this is going to look, but sometimes you just got to block in from one angle first and kind of fix everything based on that. So I'm just selecting all those edges now, scaling them in so they're all identical. Just kind of making sure that I've got a good square around here. I think this is going to have to come down a bit. And yeah, quite a bit. Let's get rid of these back here too. So just kind of slowly blocking this in a few pieces at a time so I don't stretch anything too far and kind of lose the perspective of what I'm trying to do here. This is going to come pretty far forward, I think. Yeah, I pretty much want this right up against this. this all may just come too far forward right now, but for now, I have to kind of settle for that because I'm not going to have time today to fix it. Now I'm just kind of trying to round everything off so it feels spherical still, at least around the kind of silhouette of it. Probably have to add a few subdivisions in here, a few extrusions or something to make it work right, but let's see, from the side that's looking close. That just might be where I have to settle on it for right now. Let's see, 3:30. About a half an hour left. I may go a little bit longer. We'll see how things are going. So you gotta get snapped all the way to the front. Yeah. Yeah, this is a very tricky shape. Round this out a little bit. So kind of got these loops. Let's check the top view actually, because this is going to have to actually come in front. So let's just push that out now. Just get it over with. It's going to have to happen. Okay, I'm getting a little closer. Starting to look the way I would want it to. It's actually kind of like the drawing. I think it's more of like this out and back in kind of thing. I kind of like making it more of like a sleeker sort of thing. I think that's actually going to work better anyway with these other shapes. Because sometimes just shapes like these just don't meet up very well. You really start to build them out in 3D. I had to stretch a lot, so I'm adding that extra edge loop in there. So I can define the top-down silhouette a little bit better. It's a big stretch here. So this is definitely not the ideal topology right now for this. But I'm going to have to go with it for now. Kind of what I'm stuck with. It's a little funky looking. I think that's what I'm going to go with for now. It works for blocking. I'm just going to want to move on to some of the other pieces. So got something in there as blocking. Can always redo that a little bit. So I'll just mirror that. Oh, let's see, I got a few verts kind of off center. So now let's just fix those real quick. Okay, that should work. And yeah, so it may have been better to actually not start that from a sphere. Probably what I'll do when I fix it is just like delete these faces, get this working, and just kind of course I say that and now I see something, so I'm just gonna do that right now before I forget. So got it close, and now just a few extra things to sort of lock it in. Yeah, that works a little bit better. Works a lot better, I think. Well, maybe not. A little bit better, I think. A little more to work with, a little bit cleaner. So. Hey. Doing my best to get those vertices as well as I can. It's not always easy. Curves with hard edges are honestly harder than just doing a human face. Sometimes. Maybe just because I don't have a lot of practice doing it. I don't know. Change that a little. And I'm just going to cheat this forward a little bit and call that. Alright. Back view and scale this one more time and just do a quick mirror, and I think leave this one alone. Move on to the vents next, I think. Am I only going to mirror the things that are not along the center form? For now, I'm kind of mirroring everything, Andy, but it's a little bit different. So, like, for things that are right along the center line, yeah, I just do a direct mirror. So, you know, I have this, and I model it like that, and just mirror it. It's the same general idea with these pieces, but what I'll probably do, so this one actually does meet up with the center. So as long as it hits the center, I'll just do a straight mirror on it. But if it doesn't, you know, like pieces like this, and this, most likely what I would do is once I've got all those pieces, depending on how I group things, you know, I can just group it. Grouping automatically puts my pivot at the center, and then I would just basically duplicate, do -1 on X, and there we go. So then I have that. Now, I won't get too into it, but like the way that it would work with UVs is this flips the normals. If I were to freeze transformations, so once I export this, I would want to freeze transformation so I don't have a -1 on my group. So I freeze the scale, but what that does is if I turn off two-sided lighting again, you see that this flips all my normals. Then I'd still have to come back in, select all these, and the other way to see that is if you have your shaded normals on here. You know, right now it looks normal, but all the normals are facing inwards, so I would have to I have it set up here, but you can also do it through mesh display. You can flip your normals, and so that makes them all red. Now I haven't laid UVs out, so then the only thing you got to do after that then is actually flip them in the UV space. Just by this will flip it horizontally, this will flip it vertically. So you want to see blue, basically. Red means that your normals are reversed. So like if you had a normal map on it, everything would be kind of rendering wrong. A little bit weird. What was the normal script? I'm not sure what that was. So I'll just leave this up now, actually. Oh, turn this off. Oh, set the normal angle, yeah. So I have it bookmarked up here. It's just set normal angle. But actually I have to do it on this centerpiece because you can see I have like a lot of times when you mirror things, it'll actually just harden that center edge, even if it's very, very, very small angle. So just mesh display, set normal angle, brings this up. So usually I'll set to around 35 to 45 by default. So this, I wanted the whole thing to be smooth, so really I could just do mesh display soften. Again, all of this is doing is changing the way that the renderer is rendering them. It's not actually changing the topology or anything at all. It's just sort of a hardware rendering thing. So let's see, 343. All right, I think I can do these vents pretty quickly. So I'm just going to try to do that now. So I'm going to start with the bottom piece this time, and I may just go out and block this whole wing in. I don't know, let's see. Let's just... Actually, I'll mirror this now, because make everything look a little bit better. It's actually kind of starting to look like a probe now. It's a little ways to go. I may just hit 3 on this to kind of smooth that render out. Let's see. Bugging me still. Just take a look. What it looks like with occlusion now, just to kind of get some of those edges. See how that's looking pretty good. Obviously, this piece needs some work. It's a little funky looking right now, but the rest is not looking too bad. Again, I think when I look at this, I think kind of what happened is like you can tell that this whole piece is just way too wide. Like this should be way, way, way smaller. And I think it's just sort of like this weird forced perspective that happened here, where like the distance from here to here, even though the drawing kind of matches up, is actually like half the distance here. So this should end here. So it's a little bit funky. I think. I'm not sure. I'm just interpreting it wrong. That's very possible. All right, I'm going to make this side wing real quick. Or these vents. I'm turning the occlusion off as well. So just snap that in here. And it's going to come a little bit in front. Looks like it starts around the same height as this. So let's see. Yeah. Okay, so this definitely needs to go in more. Because this, I mean, this sits right up against this. So I need to, I'm not going to do it right now, but this whole piece kind of needs to come in a little bit. Well, as I think Andy knows, I always say I'm not going to do this right now, and then I do this right now. So that's what's going to happen. Real quick adjustment, just to make it closer. I'm not going to get it perfect. It's still going to be a little wider than I think it should be, but I think this will help just a touch. Kind of needs to be specific. I don't want to just do a scale. So I want to make sure all this still kind of lines up. And this wing in. That there. Just get rid of that group. And it does not want me to select that piece. Okay. Just realign it because everything got scaled a little bit. So not perfect, but a little bit closer. All right. Now let's just mirror these across again. This group. Now I'll just set it to -1 just so I can kind of see what's going on over there. And let's select this vent. So, oh, I think I hit 7. Don't want to hit 7 right now. Pull that out. This down. This kind of comes up a little bit higher. The whole thing kind of looks like it's slanted down just a little bit. Like that's more than just a perspective slant. I think the whole thing is kind of, vents I think are kind of like in that shape. Just a little bit. So this is doing something weird. So this needs. Alright, that top piece is gonna have to change a little bit to work. That's all right. Let's widen this just a tad more. And I'm going to put my reference up in my other window. So I need to see that kind of full screen. Okay, so this is actually pretty wide. If I look at that, that's pretty wide. Alright, so I got this first one here. I'm going to cut an edge loop in it right around here. Just kind of eyeball this and try to get this done quickly. See where I can get in 12 minutes on this piece. Pull it back a little, kind of hitting that point. Actually, I'm going to pull it all the way back to this point, which should be, if I line it up, pretty much where this is. So let's go all the way back, and this way I can get a nice straight line on the curve here. Let's taper that up just a little. This whole thing is built on just a real slight curve. Oops. Does not want to snap to the middle. There we go. Alright, that's good. Okay, so let's actually come up with this a little bit. And then, so our first piece is right here about. Let's bring that in to there. And another one. Make sure I got nothing behind it. Here. That needs to come up. Pretty noticeably so. And actually this goes back a little bit, you can see. So let's select this edge. Do our bevel. 0, 2, 5 I think is good. 2 segments, so I can then bring this edge loop in. There we go. Scale that in just a little bit, just to define that plate, the end of that plate basically. And let's see, we got one more little piece up here. So I'm going to add an edge loop back here. Bring that up. And let's just keep going on this piece. Let's just make this whole wing kind of one piece. Again, we're always blocking. I can always break these pieces off later if I need to do anything special to them. So from what I can tell, let's see, I go back one. So this goes straight back. I'll worry about the top later. And then I'm just going to go straight up. But also, so I'm going to use this tool, which allows me to move just on that axis. Scale that in. Go straight back. So this part really needs to be considerably scaled in. And actually it looks like it tapers the whole way back, so let's do that. Be a little bit off, but I think we can get it pretty close. Out. These three are kind of tricky to get that just right. I think that's a little bit. It's very sensitive. Sometimes these really basic, very, very small tapers can be, the tiniest little adjustment can kind of really change how they feel. All right, I think I'm going to go with that for now, though. It might be a little thinner, maybe, but I think it's pretty good. So let's see, I'm going to need a big one here, and let's rotate that. Let's really change the shape. Sorry, getting some Slack messages. side view. So that actually needs to be quite a bit thicker. I think all this needs to just come down a little. Maybe this kind of comes up. Yeah, okay. This comes up a bit more while it's going back. Yeah, 'cause that felt way too thin. Just kind of eyeballing here. So I'm going to do this big chunk here first, just because that's a really obvious one. So this time, because this is like such a big thing, I'm actually going to do a second extrusion. So I'll get that width right first. Okay, and now let's just extrude in. I'll do my offset first, I think 0.01. No, I want to do negative 0.01. Nope, missed that. And one more. It's just negative 0.03, I think. Yeah, there we go. That's pretty cool looking. So this, let's see. So we have this bottom piece, which is right here. That goes, let's see, that goes straight up to this. Oh, okay, okay. So that's what I need to do. All of this goes up just a little bit. Because this kind of comes into this piece here. That's what's going on. So, glasses are really falling off my head now. Okay, there we go. I'm not going to do all these panels. These little fine panels would look great modeled, but that would take quite a while to do. So I'll probably, maybe save those for later for texture or something like that. Also, this cut here is going to be a little tricky. A lot of tricky things on this model. I'm going to do something else. So I'm going to block this in real quick. So I'm going to duplicate it and isolate it. And all that I want are these faces. I'm just going to shift select to delete that. And then this, I can actually get rid of some of these edges because I don't need them for the piece I'm about to make. Okay, and now keep that just a little bit longer. So now I just want to extrude up, but I'm going to turn this back on now. Okay, and I'm just kind of making that piece now. So this just kind of comes down. So just kind of make sure that that gets sort of tucked away there. Push this out. Kind of comes up, then back down quite a bit. So I'm just going to kind of go with that for now. And maybe one more little taper in. That does not want me to select that edge loop for some reason. Or that face loop. There we go. Okay, so a couple quick manual manipulations of that, kind of get this back, tucked back down there. Okay, good. One more time. So obviously there are a few more panels and pieces that are going to get built into this at some point. But right now, I just wanted to kind of, since it's kind of getting lower on time, I wanted to get as many of the basic shapes in as possible. So sometimes it's good to model that way up front, but sometimes when you got a really clean reference, it's nice to just kind of go in and just start doing a little bit more detail. Nothing crazy, but you know, a little bit of detail just because you know where things are going to go. So it's almost more work to really block it in and then come back to it sometimes. Sometimes it's quicker just to do it all up front. All right, so these are going to be vents on the front. So let's cut a hole out here and bring that in. So first, offset, we probably want to do something like 0.1. Do that taper in the middle, or that bevel, negative 0.0. Okay, and then when it goes straight back, and I can see when I look at the reference too, it kind of goes in and then back out again. So I'm going to put that in there. And also, so basically I want to offset a negative here, maybe 0.1. One sec. Glasses kept falling off. Okay, and then go back with it. Okay, that was too much. I'm just going to do it manually. I know, let's undo a few of these. Okay, back. Offset to -0.05. Go back. All right, cool. And I'm just going to take this one and go a little bit further back with it. And let's just get inside here so we can kind of see, make sure it doesn't penetrate through. I think that's good. So I want to kind of round these bottom edges out a little bit. So we'll just do that real quick. Kind of quick and dirty sort of thing here. Two. Round that out. So that leaves me with this gigantic end-gown on the back. So I'm just going to draw a couple of edges around that real quick. Just a quad, make sure these are quads. Okay. That'll do for now. What else? What else? There's definitely quite a bevel going up the side of this. Let's just put that in there. And that's way too big. Alright, I'm going to wait on that actually. I do have, alright, I'll put this up here though so I can do this shape back here and really get this blocking almost complete. So I did that because I want to try to get this little extrusion out of here. It's going to be a little bit dirty, but I think it's going to be close enough to kind of get the idea across. So to do that, let's see, that goes there, and there's a little bit of a, this comes down. That's how it's supposed to go. And I'm just gonna go out a little bit with that. Maybe thickness 0.1. Wow, that did something weird. Okay, so this is kind of gonna need some cleanup. Sometimes when you get a few weird angles like this, your normal angles start getting a little bizarre. And you get stuff like this happening. I'm just going to kind of come in and manually change it Just sort of try to make sure that it's even extrusion all the way around. Not being super precise, just kind of get it close, just so it, at a glance it looks right. It's a little more interesting to look at now. This normal angle needs to go changed a little bit. I think I'm going to soften that for now. Okay, so we're hitting about 4. I'm going to put the vent pieces in here to kind of block that hole a little bit. And I guess that might be about it for today. But I think we're getting pretty close to the shape of everything at this point. Obviously, I still need the wings on the side. I'll have to make some stuff up for the jets back here and kind of figure out what's going on here. This is pretty much just a cylinder that's kind of set to kind of be flush with this at the top. And just a couple of standard jets here and probably a few jets on the bottom to kind of keep it elevated, because this is going to be a probe that sort of is used both in space, or both kind of flying and then just sort of hovering too. So it's got to have those propulsion system underneath. But yeah, let's see. Maybe I'll throw a render together real quick after I put those vents in. It's being locking up on me here. All right. Back view. Just going to angle these in such a way that you can't really see through it too well. Just to make it a little more interesting, I might do just a little extrusion around here. So it's not just like a perfectly flat sort of thing. So let's do this while it's not rotated. Pull that out and just kind of create a nice little edge on that. That'll do. Just scale it in a little. And now it's just a matter of duplicating that a few times. So I can do it this way and eyeball it, or I can do a duplicate special. Let's make sure they're the same. I actually have duplicate special options bookmarked up here. So I'm going to do a copy, new group, and let's see how far down I want it. Right now it's at -0.5 and Y. So it looks like I want to go down by about 0.25. Yeah, I'd say about 6 copies. Nope. Okay, that's not it. Because it's not in world space. Okay, hold on. World. No, that's the group. Alright, so I'll just freeze rotation on that. Okay, that didn't work. What am I doing? What am I missing here? X translate. Oh. Duh. So actually I can stick those frozen. Okay. Doing the wrong axis by accident. So, whoops. Okay, so I think it's actually more like -0.3. few more copies then. Make that thinner, rotate a little more, and we'll actually do negative 0.25, and let's do like 9 copies. All right, 10 copies. Okay, so now last thing to do is just kind of go by one, and just kind of bring in the verts just a little bit so they line up properly with the housing on the vents. So since this is actually like a pretty clean inset, I could have actually set my pivot over on the right side here and actually had it scale down a little bit too, by like 0.1, and it probably would have been perfect. But you can always come in this way too, it doesn't take that much longer. Finding that increment might have taken me a minute anyway. So let's also, when you do the duplicate special, it leaves the source one outside of the group, so I'm just going to put it inside the group now. And let's just group all of this together. We'll call this vent front. Group this together, just call it vent R, since it's kind of on the right side of it. Duplicate x negative 1. So another thing I wanted to do here. Yeah, okay, let's just fix this up, make this a little cooler looking, and then we'll call it. Which basically is going to be as simple as moving this back, scaling it in a teeny bit, and maybe adding more hedge loop here. I'm going to inset that, just extrude it back. Set that normal angle to 5. I'm going to set it even higher. I want to get hard edges on this actually, I think. Okay. So I'm going to hit up to get vent R, duplicate that, make it 1, call that vent L. So this is just kind of for rendering purposes. So yeah, so that's about where we are. A few things might be a little off right now. I think this actually could probably, maybe these need to come down a little bit. But you know, kind of guess on a few things. Yeah, so just do a quick render of that, just to kind of get an idea of what it's looking like. It's looking pretty cool, I think. I think adding these wings down here would definitely balance it out quite a bit more, and getting some of the stuff underneath. Just do like a quick, literally just a 3-cylinder setup real quick underneath, just to kind of fill that out. Okay, put some serious blocking wings in here real quick too. So we at least have a shape for everything, and then that'll be it. not quite perfect there, but put a few things in that just sort of fill it out a little bit, just for a quick test render. Almost feel like this whole thing kind of needs to be more like that. It'd be kind of cool to do like just some animation of this thing moving. Let's get one more in there. I never actually feel like I'm finished even when I'm just blocking things in. It's impossible to just stop. Alright. Good enough. So let's turn off this. And you know, you can see it's definitely a little bit funky right now. But it's you know, there's a few things that would definitely need to be adjusted moving forward. But for kind of starting off for just a couple of hours, you know, pretty complex shape, not too bad. All of this I think needs to be expanded a little bit more. This window area could probably be a little bit bigger. This piece needs to be shrunk quite a bit. This is taking up, you know, this area is bringing up way too much space. This could be a little bit wider. I think it's kind of tall right now. There's definitely some stuff still to do, but you know, that's where we got in just a couple hours. So we will go with that. I'm just gonna set up a really quick render. Give it MIA shader. See what I'm doing. I'm just going to go with a preset on this. Kind of a combination of presets. Get a matte finish to start, and then just add a little bit of maybe the glossy plastic. I think glossy finish. I actually want to do just like 10% of that. Raise my roughness and gloss. I'll add a little bit of glossy. Okay. Apply that to everything. Maybe give it a little bit of a blue. Now. Let's just make another one that we put on the window here. Make that a little red. What else do we have? Got some yellow strips, but I'm not going to be able to get those in right now. So, alright, so this is just sort of a test anyway. And then, set up a quick IVL. There's image-based light. Do a little bit of final gather render. So, I have some HDRIs kind of stored here. Which one? Like the paper mill. Doesn't make any sense for this, but it gives nice values for the most part. So do that. Still gonna add a directional light, just so I can actually cast some shadows easily. Before going any further, though, I want to tell this to don't want this to render. So render stats, just set the primary visibility and visibility in environments off. It will show up in reflections right now because I want to have like a little bit of something reflecting in the window, but that's it. So let's see. I think where do I want my shadows? I'll try it kind of across the front, just sort of pushing back, so that'll cast shadows into the vents here. And let me just make sure my render settings are moderately high, so it looks nice. 5 for quality overall. I'm going to go to my legacy. Legacy options give you a few more options. They kind of hid a lot of this stuff in the new versions. So kind of do a default of accuracy 50, point density about 0.2, point interpolation 20, and bounces at 2. It's kind of my default go-to for starting out with Final Gather. And lastly, let's see what the resolution is. So let's just do a nice high res. I'll do 1080. I'll do 720 or 1080 at 75%. Yeah, there we go. All right. Let's see. Take a second. That's pretty bright, but get the idea. So getting closer. See if I can move as I can. So here we go. So definitely not quite there yet, but a lot of shapes are getting pretty close. Getting the general idea anyway. Yeah, so I got to figure a few things out. You know, up front here, it looks like these vents need to be in here tight. I think the vent just needs to be considerably wider. I think that'll definitely help. And then maybe it tapers back. I think the vent size tapers back as it gets to around here. Because you can see the width of these two way off here. Like these need to be way further apart. Some of that might be a forced perspective thing, but I definitely have to work that out to get that looking right. I think this middle piece actually needs to go quite a bit higher. I think the whole thing might be stretched out a little too far. But if you aren't looking at this, I think it's a decent start to a probe. So thanks everyone who joined today. We're going to try to back this up to YouTube. I think it should be up here for about a month. And then yeah, we'll see. Maybe next week I can record a time lapse of kind of finishing this thing up. We'll see what comes up next week. But yeah, thanks everybody, and I will. Someone will see you next week. I'm not sure who's streaming next week, but we will be here next Friday at around 2 o'clock. So hope to see you then.